Quite.
All right, welcome everyone. Hey, it's John Corkin here, and I am the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where I talk with amazing and interesting and fascinating educational CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, Axe Software, and many more. And we are live right now. I'm here with my co-founder, Dr. Jeremy Weisz, from his new offices. Thank you, COVID-19. Relocated offices closer to his home. And we're going to be talking in this episode about, what are we talking about here, Jeremy?
Giving.
So we're going to talk about what we call the give loop, which is the process for promoting podcast episodes after they've been released. And I think the first point really that I want to make here for everyone, and I'll pull up some slides, a little bit of additional information here just to help with the background. But the question is, when you are releasing a podcast episode, and this is especially relevant for if you're new, how do you make it go further? And if you're new, oftentimes people who are getting started with podcasting, this emerging medium, they don't think of it as a gift. They think of it as it's an inconvenience. They think of it as, the person who you've interviewed in an episode is doing you a favor, but that's not true. I don't believe that's true at all. It is truly a gift when you promote and edify and elevate the thought leadership of someone on your show. And so I think you need to approach it that way. And then there's a number of different strategies that you can use to make that go further so that you promote that person even more, so that you build a deeper relationship with that person, which then will lead to further collaborations, different opportunities, and things like that. So Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you. What are some of your thoughts on how to go about, building this give loop, as we call it?
And because when we talk about podcasting, we really are talking about giving to people in your relationships, right? And what are the ways you can do that, whether you have a big audience or not? Because people always feel like, well, maybe I don't have many people listening, but it's not about the quantity. We always talk about, it's the quality. It's the quality of the people. And I'll give you an example of how do you give to someone after the episode goes live or before the episode goes live, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a company that, like I had on today, actually, that does automotive equipment, and they basically sell it to auto repair shops. Well, if I happen to have some auto repair shop people in my network, really, let's say 1 million people, John, listen to the episode. Does it matter to them?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
No.
They really want to get in front of more auto repair shops. So if I know people in my network who actually have auto repair shops or who serve lots of auto repair shops, actually, which I do, I will just simply tag them and go, hey, Aaron, this person's actually name is Aaron. Hey, Aaron, tag them in the post. Check out this website. It's really good for auto repair shops. One connection, that's before the episode goes live even. I could just paste this person, his information onto Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, and go, here's his website, here's his company. It was great having you on the podcast. And then tagging a couple people who would be relevant to they'll be relevant to each other. You know what I mean?
And so you do such a great job of this, especially, immediately after doing the interview. I love your trick. Talk about the handwritten notes trick that you use.
Yeah, is that a trick? It's like I actually take notes on my interviews. So like this is one, I don't know if you can see this. This is the one I did today. So I actually take notes while the person's talking.
And you are a doctor, which is why that looks like chicken scratch.
Yeah, so I actually take notes on there and on maybe interesting things that they said. Maybe it's a book that they said. Maybe it's a question I want to ask. And what I do is I take a picture of it and I send it to them. I'm like, see, I was paying attention, and they like that. But just any personal.
But then you promote it. You post it on social media.
Yeah, also. Sometimes I'll take it and I'll just post a picture of my handwritten notes on social media, and it's just different. It's different from what people normally post. You don't see handwritten notes, so it's just doing what you already do. And some people will naturally do other things, and what you do is different, and just share it with the guests and share it with the audience too.
Absolutely. Right. So, and I'm going to share here an example. So this is an example of a share of the actual post when the post went live. So you shared a post with an interview of Richard Rossi, who's a very successful entrepreneur who we both know and have hung out with him in person. But, he's a well-connected guy. He's got a great network. A lot of other well-connected founders and CEOs are connected to him. And he ended up turning around, and because it's so easy to do, especially on LinkedIn, he ended up sharing it. And what I love about that is then, you look at it, people in his network are commenting, are engaging, are liking it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced this. Sometimes they reach out proactively to you and they'll send a message and say, hey, I really enjoyed that interview you did with Richard. Other times I'll reach out proactively to them. It's like being at a cocktail party, a virtual cocktail party with friends of friends, and just extending a hand and introducing yourself to them and then having a conversation with them as well.
Yeah. I mean, it is when you Richard's business is amazing. He has, high school students who are basically in the STEM fields, and he brings on surgeons, astronauts, talking to these kids in like a stadium-like environment, not in this day and age, but more in a virtual environment now. So it makes it easy when you have people that you're featuring that have amazing thought leadership and businesses, sharing it with the world. And then when you share they're going to obviously be proud of it and want to share it because it's their story that we're telling. Right. In there is not my story. It's all about him and his company.
So promoting it on social media is one of those strategies that is part of the building the give loop after you promote an episode. And another one is, and this is really an important point, because a lot of people think like, I want to focus on Facebook, or I want to focus on YouTube, build a YouTube channel instead of doing a podcast. And here's what I say to that, and I'm interested in your thoughts, is look, when you do that, one company controls your destiny. Podcasting is fundamentally structured differently. It's built so that you own and you control your RSS feed. It's like real estate versus renting. And so you can then direct that across different platforms, versus if you build your platform on one channel like YouTube, it's or
dangerous.
Facebook.
Yeah, I mean,
it's totally dangerous. Yeah.
I agree with you. And go ahead.
So it's really about taking that content once you've created it, and then it's distributing across multiple different channels, so that the time of the person, the person spent talking to you, the guest, goes that much further.
And in general, also, there's different people on different platforms, right? Like I don't have an iPhone, so I'm not going to listen to it in iTunes. So if someone only has a one channel or a focus on one channel, or maybe you consume stuff on YouTube all the time, so great. But you want to make sure, if you really want to shoot it out and get widespread, people consume in different ways and on different channels as well.
Right, exactly. So some of the other strategies around how to build that give loop further. So you want to talk about some of those different strategies?
I mean, our philosophy is always, how do you give as much as humanly possible to someone, right? And so we talked about the social media. We talked about you could do like a mini introduction on social media with tagging people to make sure they hear it. Like you said, the give is putting the guest in their message across as many platforms as possible: Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all of them, and your blog, right? And so it's also sometimes just that simple, like one-to-one connection with the person, and just emailing them, and or if you have their texting them, right? It's just that personal connection, that personal touch. So there's so many ways to give, and it's like, another one is just mentioning services and people that you think others should check out, right?
During the interview, or
during
afterwards?
the interview,
yeah,
or afterwards, either
one,
right? Either one.
You do a good job of that, is mentioning, different friends and services that you believe in, or a book that you're a fan of, or an author that you really admire, and integrating that, and then following up afterwards and letting them know about it.
Yeah, I mean, like the example is AJ Wilcox. We'll give him a shout out.
Perfect
AJ
example right there.
Wilcox of LinkedIn. What's that?
Perfect example right
Yeah,
there. Well done.
B2link.com. B, the number 2 link.com. And, Ian Garlic introduced us of Story Cruise. So in the beginning, I'm going to say thank you to Ian for introducing me to AJ. And of course, I'll talk about Story Cruise for a second. And everyone should check out Story Cruise. So
Right.
it's stuff that's really just thanking the people. It's kind of like knowing your roots, John. Like thank the people who referred that person, because when I mention Ian of Story Cruise, right? You're showing it. If I'm going to text him after this and go, Ian, by the way, we just mentioned you on our LinkedIn Live, and I'm going to probably mention you on the next podcast episode. He'll be like, cool, Jeremy, you're awesome.
Right.
Like, thanks, Ian.
No, another great one right here, Dr. Scott Gray, good friend of yours, and really brilliant marketing expert.
Yeah, helps medical clinics get leads all over the country. So it's just, how do you share your network with other people? How do you share the services you use with other people?
Yeah.
And people appreciate it. So
any other thoughts on making the podcast episodes go further before we wrap things up?
No, I mean, I think it's just focused on giving to that particular guest, and that's what makes it go further, because then they're going to want to share it, and other people are going to want to share it.
Yeah, and the other thing I always say to people is I'm a big advocate of making introductions. So there's probably someone in your network who you can introduce that guest to, who they would value knowing. So you want to make sure to find out in advance, get clear, who are they looking to connect with right now? Because there's always some caliber of type of person that most people are trying to break through to the next level, right? So if there's someone that you have a connection to, I know this morning you were talking to someone and you asked a great question about, you wanted to connect to a founder of a company that exited in the billions, and you said, how difficult would it be for you? This is actually you asking for an introduction, but similar topic. How difficult would it be for you to connect me to this person? This, of course, you've already delivered. You already delivered a lot of value to this person.
Connect me to this person. I just, how hard would it be to connect to this person in general?
Yeah.
Of
course, for the purpose of featuring them on the podcast, which is a different discussion entirely, right? You're not trying to connect to them to sell them your service. You're trying to connect with them to feature them on a podcast interview.
Exactly. Yeah. That's we could talk for 2 hours about that. Right.
Yeah. But even on that point, the thing I just want to emphasize is that that's what gets you the opportunity to ask someone to make that introduction, is when you've delivered value over and over again in a high leverage way, like featuring someone on podcast, promoting them, distributing it across multiple different channels, introducing them to other people in your network or other past guests who you've had on the podcast.
And in making sure they have a good experience, like the art and science of an interview is a skill set, right? And so I don't even know if we have a URL for this, John, but if you're interested, we are going to be doing a live class. And if you're watching this later, it's a class on from A to Z, soup to nuts. How do you actually launch and start a podcast? Because so many people have been asking us these questions. So we're going to be going step by step through, how do you actually do that?
With a focus, of course, on B2B companies and using the podcast critically to get ROI, to get clients, to get referrals, to get strategic partnerships. Then, over 20 years of doing this between you and I, we've seen so many people who've started a podcast, maybe even enjoyed doing it for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and then they stop. They stop doing it. And if you ask them, they always got busy with something else, and they stopped doing it. And the reason they stopped doing it is because they weren't getting return. They weren't getting results. They weren't getting ROI from return on investment, from putting in the effort. And that's why they stopped. And that's why we are such big advocates of, you got to get return. Once you get return, once you get ROI, then you can leverage
You'll
it
never
further.
stop doing it.
You'll never stop doing it. You'll continue doing it, and then the magic really happens. Then you can continue to reap all the tremendous benefits that come from the process. All right. Well, so we'll wrap things up. For those of you who are interested in learning more about Rise 25, we help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. And this will be up on our podcast later, so you can check it out then. Maybe you're listening to it there. If you're watching live, we enjoyed having you. Thanks for being here. And you can learn more at rise25media.com or email support@rise25media.com. Dr. Weisz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Bye-bye.